Israel uses trees as a tool of genocide. This has two dimensions. One, the trees Israel removes, and two, the trees they plant instead. I'll talk about each in turn. Since 1967, when the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank began, Israel has destroyed at least 900,000 olive trees. One source I read puts the number at 2.5 million. This has happened through demolition of Palestinian homes, the building of the apartheid wall in Israeli settlements, and Israeli settlers on the West Bank just straight up setting fire to olive trees, a trend which has incidentally escalated since October 7th. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the desperate circumstances in Gaza have forced Palestinians there to cut down their own trees for firewood. This is tragic for a number of reasons. Destroyed olive trees entail a loss of income, livelihoods, and food security for Palestinians, as well as a loss of time, since olive trees take many years from planting until they bear fruits. It's not for nothing that Palestinians often compare the loss of such trees to the loss of a friend or even a child. Speaking of many years, olive trees can get really old, like centuries and millennia old. Because of this, olive trees carry a strong cultural significance for Palestinians, with their longevity and deep roots being symbolic for the Palestinians' own attachment to the land. So, destroying ancient trees amounts to not just a literal severing of roots, but also cultural erasure, an attempt to wipe out all traces of Palestinian life before the arrival of the Zionists, in order to bolster the myth that Palestine was a neglected desert that settlers in their generosity made bloom. Which brings me to the trees Israel has planted in place of the olive trees. The Jewish National Fund, the biggest landowning organization in Israel, has planted 250 million trees. You might think that planting lots of trees would be a good thing, but it matters what kind of trees you plant and where. Most of the trees planted are Aleppo pine trees, and while they do grow naturally in small numbers in Palestine, the mass planting of them has been an ecological disaster that threatens numerous local plant and animal species. The saplings need lots of water, the pines acidify the soil when they fall to the ground, and the trees are extremely flammable. Because of that, and because of global heating, forest fires are common in Israel. Which reminds me that olive trees are great carbon sinks, so destroying a million plus of them probably wasn't the best idea. But here's the kicker, the part that's truly fucked up about all this. These pine forests are used to hide evidence of ethnic cleansing, of the 1948 Nakba that displaced 700,000 Palestinians and destroyed 500 of their villages. Pine forests have been planted on the ruins of many of these Palestinian villages. Like with the destruction of ancient olive trees, this is an attempt to erase all traces of indigenous Palestinian life before the founding of the State of Israel. It's a prime example of green colonialism, of imposing a certain kind of ecology at the expense of another. It's worth mentioning that these pine forests look European, and Zionist settlers have always imagined Israel as an extension of Europe. So yeah, while the connection between ecology and the Israeli oppression of the Palestinians isn't immediately obvious, it turns out they have everything to do with each other. If you want to learn more about this topic, I can highly recommend a video on YouTube by the channel Ornament and Crime called What is Tu B'Shvat and Why Does the Israeli State Exploit Trees for Genocide? Also, you can help Palestinians plant olive trees through Zaytoun and the Plant a Tree in Palestine project. And of course, Free Palestine. In a previous video, I talked about how Israel has planted hundreds of millions of trees to cover up the ruins of Palestinian villages that Zionist forces destroyed during the 1948 Nakba. I now have more things to say about this after reading The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Pape, which I highly recommend. It goes into harrowing detail, month by month, of what happened in Palestine from December 1947 to the summer of 1949. That is, the forced expulsion of 800,000 Palestinians from their homes, the looting of said homes, the blowing up of these homes with people still inside them, as well as summary executions, massacres where children watch their whole families get murdered, and and, the topic of this video, the immense forests that Israel planted to hide evidence of all this. To give you an idea of the scale here, 90% of Israel's forests are from after 1948. only 11% of the trees in these forests are indigenous to Palestine. Needless to say, this has radically changed the landscape. This was planned from the beginning. The Zionists had this tree planting idea already in June 1948. Today, Israel uses these trees to score environmentalist points, which might be the worst kind of greenwashing I've ever come across. Let's review some of these forests and commemorate the villages that were once there. The Beraya forest in northern Israel covers the remains of 6 Palestinian villages.
ديشوم علمة قديتة عمقة عين الزيتون بيريا.
The Ramat Manash Park covers up no less than 11 villages.
اللجون المنسي عين المنسي الكفرين البطيمات خبيزة داليت الروحة سبارين بريكة السنديانة الزينات.
The Jerusalem Forest and Jerusalem National Park cover up, in whole or in part, at least 7 villages.
عين كارم صوبة سطاف الجورة بيت الميس بيت محسير دير ياسين.
Deir Yassin is incidentally the site of possibly the most infamous of all the massacres Zionist forces committed in 1948, where 170 people were killed, including 30 babies. These are just some of the many Palestinian villages that now lie in ruins under the cover of forests. To give just 2 more examples, Lubia is today covered by Lavi and the South Africa forests, and there's a very interesting documentary about it that you can watch for free on YouTube, The Village Under the Forest. Then there's Amwas, now covered by the Kanda Park. As you can see, the before and after pictures here are stark. Amwas was destroyed in 1965, which shows that the ethnic cleansing and the tree planting that came with it didn't end in 1948. The Nakba, the catastrophe, is very much still ongoing. These parks and forests are today popular tourist and recreational destinations for Israelis, places where they go hiking and have picnics. The organization that governs these parks and forests, the Jewish National Fund, has made them oh so tourist-friendly, with clearly marked trails and signs that say absolutely nothing about any atrocities that happened in the late 1940s. The ruins that are still clearly visible, because these artificial forests can only hide so much, why, those must be from ancient biblical times, you see. Palestinians? What are you talking about? Not only are Palestinians denied the right to return, but the forests make sure there's not much to return to. These forests are part of a concerted effort to erase all traces of Palestinian life. Ilan Pape uses the term memoricide to describe this, and I think that's apt. But I want to end on a positive note. Some Palestinians have been fortunate enough to be able to visit the site where their village once lied, and in the small woods where Al-Muyadil was, something remarkable happened. The pine trees there, being non-native, couldn't adapt well to the soil. They were plagued with disease and rot, to the point where some of them broke in half. And what started sprouting out of their trunks? Olive trees, the symbol of Palestinian steadfastness and rootedness to the land. It's as if nature itself is saying, "Free Palestine."
Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and a comment, and please share the video. I would greatly appreciate that. I want to share some fundraisers for people currently in Gaza. Samar and her family, the Gada family, and the Fouda family. I'm sorry about the pronunciations, those were probably not correct, but it would mean the world to me if you donated to any of them. Links are in the description. To regular viewers of my channel, I deeply apologize for not uploading anything here for many months. Special thanks, or rather special apologies, to my Patreon supporters, to Stachan, Haruna, and the rest. I'm bad at this YouTube thing. Sorry.